What's going on, Panthers? I'm Luis Perez, and I'm excited to say this is my final semester here at FIU. This campaign project was a no-brainer for me to take on. The decline of African American interest in baseball is something that baffles me, and I didn't quite understand why. Yet before I get into the project, let's step back and understand why I chose this topic. Baseball for me and my family is an essential part of our everyday life. It's our oxygen, it's our water, if you will. Baseball has afforded me a lot of life lessons. It is safe to say that the game of baseball and I are serving a life sentence. However, my passion for baseball has taken a different turn and a whole new sense of intrigue since the age of 19. I've traveled the world and had the privilege to make a childhood dream come true of mine, and that's to serve as a public address announcer for many athletic events, again, not only just on the local level, but literally on a global level. And again, no events more dear to my heart than those baseball events. Here's a clip of what I do for a living, and hope you guys enjoy this.
Afternoon, Rattler fans. On behalf of Dr. Elmira Magnum, President of Florida A&M University.
So yeah, that's me doing my thing. I thoroughly enjoy both my jobs as an announcer and as a media production teacher at Hialeah Gardens High School. Now that you understand my passion for the game of baseball, the more I travel for baseball events, the more I realize that other people share the same passion for the game like I do. Yet one demographic seems to not share this passion, and that is the African American community. I'll be honest, the participation of an African American in baseball is so scarce that when I'm hired to do a baseball showcase or an event and I see an African American participate, I instantly want to know more about them. I'm intrigued. I research what their path to the baseball diamond was like. And although that might be going the extra step, that's just kind of showing you how scarce it is to see a African American not only just participate, even just something as simple as being a fan of the game. Here's some statistics that actually back that up. In this game right now, in Major League Baseball, only 8% of the Major League rosters are made up of people who identify as black, African American. That is actually a mirror in the stands as well. Only 8% of Major League Baseball fans identify as African American. This is a far, 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 far reach from the competitors that Major League Baseball has, and that's the NFL and the NBA. I thought to myself, there has to be something more here. There has to be a reason why Major League Baseball just falls off the face of this earth when it comes to reaching this demographic. And instead of trying to go forward and look at the demographic and what this demographic might like and research their current market, I thought to myself, man, I have to do some history. I have to look into some history here. I have to go back in time and realize where we've been with the African American community when it comes to baseball. You see, Major League Baseball is the biggest professional baseball league in the world. Has a long, rich history that dates back to the 1800s, and within this history is the glorification of the color barrier being broken back on April 15th, 1947, when the Brooklyn Dodgers signed the first African-American baseball player, that of course being Jackie Robinson. This isn't news to most Americans or to you who is listening to this video right now, but this is by far one of the largest steps in American history towards ending segregation, let alone in athletics, sports, and everything that comes in between. However, again, we fast forward 70 years and only 8% of players identify as African American. Again, 8% identify as African Americans in the stands as well. Yet, this isn't the part that baffles me the most. The part that baffles me the most when it comes to the lack of interest in the African American community is that we once had an incredibly successful league known as the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues was the African American community's response to what was at the time a segregated Major League Baseball. Negro League Baseball did extremely well in dollars for just about any business, but let alone a black business. Was rare during the segregation years. They would pull in millions of dollars on an annual basis. Yet, here was Negro League Baseball pulling in that type of money, and it's almost hard to believe that, given modern day knowledge, African Americans have very little interest in baseball. There had to be something there. I had to find out. So I kept doing my research. In a nutshell, this is what sparked my interest in this campaign. This is when I was all in, if you will. Why is there such a disconnect in 2017 when the sport was once so successful in the African American community? Then it dawned on me. I need to understand how we got here and then come up with a plan on how we can make baseball and the African American baseball community, well, gel again, or should I say the lack of the African American baseball community. Throughout my research, I found many reasons as to why baseball has become so unattractive in the African American community. Signs pointed towards the likes of simply being that baseball is a white man's sport, which I was just not going to accept. Baseball is too expensive for the American community, for the African American community. The other sports leagues are just more attractive to the African American community, and the excuses of why this is so just seemed endless on my research. Then I got to one story I found and became the beginning steps towards my campaign. It was an interview I found done by Jemele Hill. Jemele Hill, who works for ESPN and has had her battles with inequality stances, if you will. Well, her interview, it brought darkness to a point in history we put on a pedestal, and that brings us back to that day, April 15th, 1947, the day when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. You see, the interview that Hill conducted was a one-on-one with former Red Sox great Dennis Oil Can Boyd. Now, Dennis Oil Can Boyd uttered a line that first seems just distasteful. It just seems awful, knowing what we know today and how we were brought up with the history lessons we were brought up with. And he uttered this phrase that was quoted and put into big caps on the transcript of the interview on ESPN's website, and that's, Jackie Robinson didn't kill the Negro Leagues any more than Martin Luther King killed Black Wall Street. And it got you to thinking, is Oil Can Boyd, is he trashing Jackie Robinson and Martin Luther King? And in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. But I understood the quote the more I read it, the more I kept on reading, not only the quote over and over again, but kept on reading what Jemele Hill would dissect into, and it kind of made sense. Without the segregation issue being abolished, these very successful businesses in the African American communities would still be prosperous, if you will. Now, I'm not saying that it's not worth the price at the end of the day. If what came out of the integration of Jackie Robinson was the fact that the Negro Leagues became extinct, and here we are 70 years later, and baseball is what suffered the most, I'm okay with that. But let's just go back to the point. In many ways, Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier brought some disappointment to the black baseball fan. While Major League Baseball prospered from the breaking of the color barrier, we undoubtedly became a greater nation. That's the good part. But it seemed as the price to pay was the fall of Negro League Baseball. Things got really ugly in the Negro Leagues. All the star players, right, were sold to the Major League Baseball owners and the franchises that they owned. And at times, the Negro League owners sold the right to their star players for higher amounts of money than the salaries earned by the players in the Negro Leagues. I can see how this left a sour taste in the mouths of Negro League baseball fans. And during my research, I found that the decline of Major League fans and players declined significantly from decade to decade after the 1970s. This coincides with the final Negro League players left in the majors. Negro League Baseball and Major League Baseball, although had the same rules, had very different approaches as per entertainment. Negro League Baseball prided themselves in entertainment. Over-the-top cheering, showboating, and trash talking was as important as running hard to first base. Things you never find in Major League Baseball are those extracurriculars, the showboating and whatnot. Negro League players approached by Major League clubs when they were to sign with these new Major League teams after being Negro League players for X amount of years were always told the Major Leagues is a professional setting, all this extracurriculars would need to stop. And that just removed and sucked the soul out of what the Negro League players knew baseball as. And not only the players, but the fans. When we dissect this, it starts becoming a lot clearer why the African American population nowadays leans towards the like of the NFL and the NBA and the showboating and the lights and the entertainment value brought by these two other leagues. It starts making a lot more sense. It's closer to what the Negro Leagues were. I then went to create my survey, which, due to the responses, led me to my campaign, which surrounded itself on educating the masses on the contributions of the African Americans in this game. And in fact, in my own personal Facebook, here's a kind of a glance in it. I posted a question on this, and you just saw how a lot of people went off. Now, granted, I have a lot of baseball fans due to what I do for a living, but it's still something very interesting how we got to this point, and a lot of people had their own 2 cents. And these are my 2 cents, if you will. My campaign took an approach to bring more attention to the game's history and undoubtedly to make baseball a lot more entertaining. Again, you have all the right to go through my paper and dissect it and see if hopefully I brought light to this, what is an issue, and hopefully my campaign could start mending the wounds that were set nearly 70 years ago. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, it's been Luis Perez. It's been nothing but a pleasure to be at a Panther with you guys. And I hope not only the students, but the teachers who are listening and watching this, nothing but the best. And I will see you guys in graduation.